We're going to have to re-educate people in a way that they have the information. So when we have a conversation about reparations, it's not something to laugh about. It's something that we're not asking for. It's something that we're owed.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tatiana Pile, and today I have an excellent group of panelists with me. We have Alysha P., who is a cinematographer and co-host of the Black Girl podcast, Ashley Akunna, host and producer of The Grapevine, Donovan Thompson, panelist and producer of The Grapevine, Kimberly Jones, activist, writer, and filmmaker, and Doyin Richards, best-selling children's author and keynote speaker. Today, we're going to be talking about recognizing and investing in the Black community. How we spend our money, where we spend it, and what businesses we're supporting is more important now than ever. But my question, and anyone can jump in on this, is how can we effectively drive that change?
One of the things that we're going to have to do is educate ourselves on how we got here, because that's part of what's going to be able to assist us in the fight of having people recognize exactly how systemic racism has played a part in the inequity in which we have in this country. When you look at wealth in this nation, 90% of the wealth is owned by white people, 2.6% is owned by Black people. So when people want to point out to me Oprah and Michael Jordan and LeBron James and talk to me about Black wealth, I'll say 2.6 and leave it at that, 2.6, and I'll be done. We also have to look at how other communities were invested in for growth and development throughout this nation, which is also stuff that we're not taught and documented. Between 1921 and 1965, over $123 billion was underwritten for home ownership. 98% of that went to white people. Again, 2%.
That's crazy.
Not just went to Black people, 2% went to all other ethnicities combined. When we talk about this conversation of reparations and people begin to give us the, but it's a handout, then I reference them back to companies like Brooks Brothers Suits, who are still making suits, and generational wealth has still been passed down through those families. And then I make them acknowledge that Brooks Brothers made all of their initial money during the slave trade, that all of the coachmen, all of the people who worked in the home were dressed by Brooks Brothers, and they had a niche market of providing shoes and clothes for all slaves across the nation. And so that is generational wealth that has been accumulated. So if we talk about the generational wealth that has been accumulated, then we have to talk about the generational debt that Black people have accumulated. Besides just talking about the money itself, you have to talk about the fact if you had over 200 years where you weren't allowed to make money and another 89 years where you weren't allowed to participate in financial institutions, then you don't have the financial education to pass down generationally in the way in which the white community has had that ability. And when you talk about Tulsa and Rosewood, which I was surprised after my video went viral, how many people had never heard of them, I challenged them to come to my page so I can educate them about 30 other similar instances, about the massacre of 895 sharecroppers in Elaine, Arkansas, and about Nova Scotia, and about how Central Park used to be a Black community called Seneca Village, that they used eminent domain to run people out of that community. When you ask why your grandmother kept her money in a mattress, it's because the only bank that Black people were allowed to bank with was Freedmen's Bank, and they sold $50 million from those people and used it to build the railroad, which built generational wealth for another set of people. So you have to discuss the authentic nature of how we've gotten to this place economically so that people could understand that what we're not asking for is a handout. What we're asking for is a warranted catch-up, that they owe us some form of restitution for how we've been treated. And even if you get into the lynchings that took place in the 1960s, most of the time, people who were lynched were prominent people in the community who were seen as troublemakers. So these were business owners and ministers who also were generating wealth and jobs in their communities that were then lynched, murdered, taken out, and you weren't allowed to, again, reset yet again and pass down generational wealth. And then after segregation ended, then we started doing what we called it by a new name, and it became redlining. It became mass incarceration. And so we have to have authentic education. I challenge everybody to send a letter to the textbook company that you had when you were a child and alert them what they didn't educate you on and how you want it to look going forward. I've talked to several textbooks company and volunteered to give them some history lessons that they need to place in there if they'd like. I have not heard from anybody. We'll see what happens. But my point is that we're going to have to re-educate people in a way that they have the information. So when we have a conversation about reparations, it's not something that they can scoff at and say that happened 400 years ago. We need to educate people on how it has called itself a new name every 50 years and how it is actually showing in the bottom line on a spreadsheet. So it's not something to laugh about. It's something that we're not asking for. It's something that we're owed.
Yes.
Yeah, and
sorry.
Yes, was. And I just want to say, you know, we're talking about what's happened in America, but then you think about what's happened globally, specifically in the continent of Africa, and how resources have been plundered. And it's happening till this day. You look at parts of Nigeria, the Niger Delta, where they're extracting oil, and the people are dying because of the spillages. The animals, the crops are dying because of the spillages. You know, and the response to this from many Nigerians is, okay, first we came with pamphlets, we tried to talk to you reasonably. Now we're going to start kidnapping your executives. You know, it became that extreme because people were dying and they weren't listening. So, you know, I totally agree with what Kimberly said. I think there needs to be a re-education about what has happened in this country, definitely, and the debt that is owed to African Americans, as well as globally, and what has happened to Africa. You talk about King Leopold's ghost in Uganda, and how they're still feeling the effects of that. So I 100% agree. And I think that research definitely has to fall in the hands of white people and understand how they have affected us globally and how they benefit from that.
And just to piggyback off of what Kimberly was saying in regards to textbooks, thank God we have people like Colin Kaepernick, who has Kaepernick Publishing, who is literally helping rewrite the history and currently write the history moving forward on the stories of Black people. We didn't have people like Kaepernick. We didn't have people, you know, doing these things. Who would be telling these stories? Thank God we have social media now, because at least we're documenting it. But with that, Kaepernick is going to allow authors and people to not only retain their ownership, but control the narrative as well. And I think that's super important. And I think as a Black community, we have to get more comfortable with the idea that we can change the narrative. We don't all need to have Kaepernick's name or title in order to change the narrative. You just need to have the vision and the dream, and then the people around you to help you process it and do that. So, but thankfully we have these people in our community who are willing to fight for what they know is right, fight for what they know needs to be changed, regardless of how many years it took us to get here. If we didn't have these people, we would be back at square one.
Absolutely. Doyin, I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, no problem. One thing that I'm not going to do is step over any Black women who are talking. So I will wait my turn patiently. So
we appreciate
that. That being said, there's one thing that I feel like we're not talking about. And Kimberly mentioned this earlier a little bit about the whole 90% thing and the white wealth, and as far as reparations are concerned. But here's the thing. I don't know about y'all, but I'm doing a lot of educating white people for free right now, and it's exhausting as hell. So one thing that I did is like, yo, listen, here's the thing. I am dropping my Venmo right there, and I was like, you know what? You want to learn on my time? It's gonna cost you. And here's the thing, a lot of Black people feel really icky about that. Like, I don't know, like, I don't feel icky at all about it. And one thing that I did, I launched the Anti-Racism Fight Club. And what that is, it is a group of white people who come to me, and I teach them everything they know that they need to know to be an active anti-racist in America. But here's the thing. Admission is not free. It's like you have to pay to get in. And here's the thing about that is that when I told them about it, the Anti-Racism Fight Club, the thing sold out in under 3 hours because white people want to learn. They want to get better. Not all of them, mind you, but there's a lot of good white people who are tired of sitting on the sidelines or are finally waking up and like, yo, I need to do my part.
Yes.
To end this stuff. They're seeing what's happening in the Black and brown bodies all over the world, and they're like, yo, this is a problem, and we want to help. So I highly recommend that Black and brown voices like all of yours, do not be afraid to charge for your knowledge and your expertise, because you've been giving it for free for so long. Maybe. Time's up. Time's up.
I agree with that 100%. And to that point, what I wanted to really highlight was, we talked about social media, we talked about education, we talked about being active, about making sure you get your bread. One of the most amazing things that I have seen during this time is Black people on LinkedIn going in on these companies. It's amazing. It is fantastic. It's one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. And the reason why is because, as we know, anyone who's been in the corporate space, we know about the macro and the microaggressions. We know about the glass ceiling. We know about all of the things, people taking our ideas, not giving us credit for things. Like it runs the gamut. And finally, we have the opportunity to say, I didn't like when this happened. This is what I've been experiencing. And I think that that is amazing power. I think that that's a part of this snowball effect. This is what I need moving forward. I need this day off because it's important to me as a Black person. It is important that we're not only diversity leads. It is important that we're just not working in the mailroom. It's important that we tell the stories and that white people are just not talking about us like we don't exist.
Right.
These are the things that we need to continue to demand and actively be comfortable with making white people uncomfortable. No longer do we need to hold on back in the back of the elevator being scared to intimidate a white person. No longer should you be intimidated to talk to your boss. If anybody does you wrong, you let the world know.
Right.
You let whoever know, so that we can be active and proactive and make sure that this isn't just a moment, that this is something that continues.
And I just want to add one more point. I just want to say, a lot of times, even before you get inside the company, getting inside the company is a huge barrier. You know, the only reason that I got certain corporate jobs was because of other Black people at those jobs. So I implore these companies who are writing all these statements, that's nice, but they have to look within their corporation and realize that there aren't a lot of Black people, especially in positions of power. And as a lot of people leave these jobs, they leave these corporate jobs for their mental health. They leave these creative jobs because they can't get to where they know that they can be. And it actually does these companies a disservice, because Black people, especially Black young people, especially this next generation coming up, we're full of talent, we're full of vitality, beauty, and add so many things to these companies, which we see. On Twitter, we run social media, we run Twitter, you know what I mean? So it's not enough to just take these ideas when you see them on Twitter and on social media. You have to hire these people. You have to hire them in positions of power, and you have to pay them well.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy, Donovan, that you started talking about the companies, because out of the Fortune 500 companies, there are only 4 Black CEOs and none of them are women, you know, and that's just honestly like a mirror of how companies treat Black people. When you hear about the tenure at companies and people like almost only there for 6 months to a year, like it's very telling about how how undervalued we are. Do you guys feel like this is genuine? Do you feel like it's a right step in the direction towards, you know, more inclusivity and diversity in these companies?
I think people are doing it out of fear, and I think that's great. Be fearful, as long as it's getting done. But I think it's up to us to continue to tell these stories and to be honest and to say it's not about hating white people. We love all people. You know, Black people, we're the most loving people. But it's about being honest about our experiences in these spaces. So no, I don't think it's genuine, but I think it's going to last. And I think that's because we're going to continue to hold people's feet to the fire.
I couldn't agree with that statement more. I think that right now there's a lot of posturing, because you got to keep in mind, there has been a global reaction to this movement. This movement has not been local. It has not been national. It has not been relegated just to African Americans. It has been a global response. I get emails from Israel, from New Zealand, from Australia, from like all over the world. I think that people, you know, these companies recognize that it is just not the 13% of Black people in the US who has their eyeballs on me right now. The world is looking at all of us to see how we're going to behave. And so they felt they need to have some kind of reaction, because some of them have made deplorable statements before. Now they're recognizing the possibility of what it's like, because people are listening to Black people and the leaders in our community for the very first time. And it's funny, because I was on a Zoom call with a bunch of my other sisters in the movement, and we were looking at our numbers on Instagram. We're like, the 10 of us called a boycott right now on one company. Curious as to see what would happen. And so they're aware of that, right? Like that we have the global ear right now, and that people are paying attention. The other thing that I would like to say is we have to stop and this is like some like private kitchen table talk Black people stuff, we have to stop giving so much power to companies exterior to us. I'll never forget when my book was published and people kept asking me which awards that I wanted, and I kept saying all I want is an NAACP Image Award, like all I want is an NAACP Image Award, and they started naming all these other awards that I should be coveting as if though I was not asking for something that I should be proud of, that I should not be proud to be acknowledged by my own people in a space that was created for us and by us. We have, you know, when I look at hashtags like Oscar So White, I'm like, well, we give those same awards at the Image Awards. You should be super proud to receive an Image Awards. Some of those awards that you want so bad at the Grammys, like we give those awards at the BET Awards. And the other thing is we have to begin to offer each other grace as we develop. Because as I stated earlier, this idea of having access to financial wealth and to building businesses is relatively new to us, because there is still redlining that is stopping Black businesses from getting the same loans that people come in from other nations and get, that people get in more prominent communities. We spend $23 billion more in education in white schools than we do in non-white schools. So we're not getting the same education. And so I tell people all the time, offer grace to Black businesses and continue to go back and be supportive and give them the opportunity to grow. They'll never grow if they're not receiving the income from you. You've been to McDonald's 64 times and the ice cream machine is down. You have not gotten that sundae yet you still return and give them your business. But if you go to a Black business and they don't have a fork, you're ready to go to Yelp. You ready to get in the car and be like, and this why I don't support Black business right there. And so it's like, we don't offer each other the same grace that we extend to other people. And we have to get better about that if we're gonna circulate the Black dollar and make sure that we are investing in the growth of the community. Yeah, Tamika Sausage doesn't have cups. It's because she did not get the loan that someone else got because of redlining. And so she started that with her 401k, and that sister is doing the best she can. If you really want to be helpful in this movement, then the next time you go back, you take her a bag of cups and you say, this just to back you up.
Amen.
That's great.
Dude. Listen, Kimberly,
that one, sis. Amen.
She is like, I gotta just say this, Kimberly, you have a gift.
Yes,
like,
Lord.
I mean, a gift. Like, you can inspire anybody. Your viral video is fantastic, but just the way you present it, man, I'm just nodding. I'm like, oh, this sister, she gets it, man. And you can reach people. So please do not stop doing what you're doing. You are immensely talented.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ditto.
I love y'all. I love all y'all brown folks. And I love everybody, right? So like being pro-Black does not mean that you're anti-white. It just means that right now our house is on fire and that's where we have to focus our energy.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.